Hi everyone. So this is a quick video to talk about the equipment or props you might want to have on hand for the Tuesday class where we're going to be working with free weights or dumbbells as they're also called. So one of the things this is my own little room where I do my resistance training. And for a while I had my weights on the ground and realized that really wasn't a wise idea. So I've set up my weights on this dresser. What I would it's actually a little bit high. I would recommend something that's about at counter height or table height. I just don't happen to have that available in my workspace. So this works just fine. It's safer than picking up off the floor. In terms of the weights themselves, I've just kind of gathered them hodgepodge. And if you are missing weights and having trouble finding them during COVID, I would recommend putting out a message to your buddies because likely somebody has some weights moldering away somewhere in their house that they're not using right now and they might want to lend you. So I would recommend doing that if you're having difficulty locating weights, because that's how I actually did find some of the weights that's in my collection. So we're all different. So for me personally, I have found that a set of 5-pound dumbbells, 8-pound and 10-pound, which, full disclosure, I hardly use the 10 pounds. So I mostly use the 5 and the 8. For some people who've never done weights before, Canadian Tire does have right now 1-pound weights and 2-pound weights. So you may want to get a set of 1-pound, 2-pound, and if you have a set of 5s kicking around, that might be a smart place to start if you've never done weightlifting before. I also have what's called a kettlebell. That's this one back here. It's a 10-pound weight. I often hold it down low when I'm doing my sumo squats. So that is also something if you have handy or somebody has a set of these. That's 10 pounds for me. That suits me just fine. I know some of you who've been doing resistance training might be going heavier. There is no one size fits all here. So what I am asking you guys to do is think carefully about where you're starting from if you have any existing injuries, because we can do these practices without any weights at all. And in fact, that's where we're going to be starting. We're going to be starting with form before we add weights. So so I think that's what I want to say about weights. One other thing, we will be doing in some of the classes some work with weights on the ground. So I would recommend, and I will actually cue you to this, to not use your heaviest set of weights. I go with my 5 pounds when I'm doing weights on the floor. And I have them really close into my mat so that I'm not reaching out, because that often injuries happen not when you're doing the actual exercise, but in the transitions, picking up a weight from the floor or reaching out and pulling the weight in. So really want you guys, and I'll be cueing you on this, to set up your weights first before we go down to the floor. Keep them close to the mat and keep them close to the body when we actually get them into position. Okay, that's it for the free weights. I'm going to hit the pause button here. Hi everyone, like to talk about Therabands next as a prop you could use, but not to worry, we can make do without it. But if you do in your search find Theraband, what you're looking for is one that is of lighter resistance and one that has a lighter resistance and a loop. So these can actually come as a loop, or what I did was I just jury-rigged a Theraband and made a knot. And it's about hip width apart. This is something we're going to loop around the ankles and do some standing exercises with that. Hi there. A few other props that are going to be really useful for you guys to have on hand is a folding chair, ideally 2 folding chairs if you've got them, but at least 1 folding chair. I also have a little folding stool. That might be useful to have on hand if you have that handy. The other thing, as I demonstrated in the hip hinge tutorial, is to have a dowel or a broom handle handy. And let's see what else. Some alternatives to weights if you don't have weights. We can get creative with this. So I just pulled out a couple of cans of beans and I weighed them on the scale. They're about 1 pound each. So if you don't have a 1 pound weight, you might want to just grab a couple of cans. So that's an alternative. For some people, you might want to grab a backpack if you have that handy, and if you have an old textbook hanging around in the house somewhere. So I found my human anatomy and physiology textbook. Here we go. It weighs almost 7 pounds. If you put that into a backpack and zip it up, so then we've got a 7 pound weight that you can work with here, either in front of the body or you can put it on your back. Now, one of the things I want folks to be careful with is if you know you have degenerative disc disease or scoliosis, you might want to be careful about loading up too much weight on the back, especially there's a lot of talk about weighted vests. So if you're thinking about going out for a walk and want to weight yourself up, just be careful if you have either one of those conditions, okay? So I wouldn't suggest doing it if you have one of those conditions. Otherwise, I think it's a great idea. Let's see if there's anything else I want to talk about in terms of props. Not so much for the resistance class, but when we talk about weight-bearing activities, especially during the winter, what I might suggest is finding a pair of Nordic walking poles. Good to have them about at this height, so there's a 90-degree flex at the elbow, and these are going to give you a lot more confidence to head out in the Canadian winter to prevent the risk of slipping or falling on that patch of ice that we really don't want to encounter. So, so these just provide extra support, good upper body strength, core strengthening as well. So we'll talk more about Nordic poles in the classes as something that might be a useful aid to get you outside and doing some weight-bearing aerobic activity that you otherwise wouldn't do in the winter. Okay, I think that's it. There'll always be more that we'll be talking about in the classes, but just wanted to let you just sort of begin to think about what you might want to have on hand for your classes.